She tilted her head, crossed her arms, gave him that look, the one that's made dozens of men before him stumble, apologize, or try harder. The look that says, "I'm the prize here, and you'd better prove yourself." But this time, something different happened. He didn't flinch. He didn't laugh nervously. He didn't try to impress her. He just looked at her, really looked at her, smiled slightly and said 5 words. "You're used to that working, aren't you?" And in that single moment, everything shifted. The ground moved beneath her feet, not because he was cruel, not because he was playing games, but because he saw her. He saw the strategy, and he wasn't afraid of it. What's going on? Welcome back. And if this is your first time here, pay attention because what I'm about to break down for you today is something most men will go their entire lives without understanding. Today, we're talking about one of the most powerful tools in male-female dynamics. I call it the killer phrase. It's not a pickup line. It's not a rehearsed comeback. It's a strategic, psychologically precise response to a very specific moment. The moment when a woman tests you. And before anyone in the comments twists this, no, this is not about manipulation. This is not about winning against women. This is about understanding a dynamic that happens every single day in every interaction between men and women, and learning how to respond to it with clarity, confidence, and self-respect. Because here's what nobody tells you when you're growing up. Women test men. They do. It's not evil. It's not conscious most of the time. It's wired into the way attraction works. And if you don't understand it, you will lose. Not because you're a bad guy, but because you're playing a game you didn't even know existed. So today, I'm going to break down exactly what these tests look like, why women use them, what happens when you fail them, and, most importantly, how one calm, well-placed phrase can completely change the power dynamic in your favor. Let's get into it. All right, first, let's define what we're actually talking about. A test, sometimes called a fitness test or a congruence test, is a moment in an interaction where a woman says or does something designed, consciously or unconsciously, to gauge your emotional strength, your frame, your confidence, your ability to hold your ground under pressure. It can look like a lot of things. Let me give you some examples. She says something slightly dismissive. "You're not really my type." She makes a sarcastic comment about your job, your clothes, your height. She flirts with another guy right in front of you to see how you react. She cancels plans last minute to see if you'll chase. She gives you attitude for no apparent reason. She asks you to do something unreasonable to see if you'll comply. Now, here's where most men get it wrong. They hear this and they think, "That's disrespectful. Why would I want to be with someone who does that?" And I get it. On the surface, it seems irrational. But you have to understand, this isn't about logic. This is about biology. This is about hundreds of thousands of years of evolutionary psychology at work. A woman's subconscious mind needs to know, is this man strong enough? Not physically, emotionally. Can he hold his ground when things get difficult? Can he remain calm under pressure? Can he lead? Can he protect? Not just her body, but her emotional world. She can't know that by asking you directly. If she says, "Are you emotionally strong?" Of course you'll say yes. Everyone says yes. Words are cheap. So instead, she creates pressure. She introduces chaos. She pokes at your armor. And then she watches, very, very carefully. She watches how you respond. Do you get defensive? Do you get angry? Do you crumble and start over-explaining yourself? Do you immediately try to win her approval back? Or do you hold your ground? Do you stay calm? Do you remain unshaken? That's the test. And your response tells her everything she needs to know about you. Now let's talk about what happens when most men encounter this. Because understanding the failure is essential to understanding why the killer phrase works so well. Picture this. You're at a bar. You approach a woman. She's attractive. She knows it. You say something friendly, maybe a little flirtatious, and she hits you with, do you use that line on every girl? Now, most guys hear this and their brain short circuits. The inner monologue goes something like, oh no, she thinks I'm fake. She thinks I'm a player. I need to prove I'm genuine. I need to fix this. And so what does he do? He starts explaining himself. No, I actually just thought you seemed interesting. I don't usually do this. It's over. The moment you start explaining yourself, the moment you start justifying your existence to someone you just met, you have failed the test. You have communicated, loud and clear, your opinion of me matters more than my opinion of myself. And that, my friend, is the most unattractive signal a man can send. Or take another scenario. You're dating a woman. Things are going well. And then one evening she says, I don't know, sometimes I feel like you don't really care about me. Now, maybe you've been showing up consistently. Maybe you've been attentive, present, generous. But instead of recognizing this for what it is, a test of your frame, you panic. You start listing all the things you've done for her. You get emotional. You beg her to see how much you care. And what happens? She pulls away. She becomes less attracted, not more. Because your reaction told her something she didn't want to know, that you are dependent on her validation, that your sense of self is fragile. That pressure breaks you. This is the cycle most men are trapped in. They don't even know they're being tested. They react emotionally. They lose the dynamic. And then they wonder why she lost interest or why she's acting distant. She didn't lose interest because you did something wrong in the traditional sense. She lost interest because you failed the test. You showed her that your confidence was conditional, that it could be shaken by her words. So now, let's talk about the other path, the path that changes everything. Let's talk about the killer phrase. Going back to that first scenario, you're at the bar. She says, do you use that line on every girl? And instead of crumbling, instead of defending yourself, you pause, just for a second. You let the silence breathe. You look at her with a slight, knowing smile, and you say, you're used to that working, aren't you? Now, let me break down what just happened on a psychological level, because this is where it gets fascinating. First, you demonstrated pattern recognition. By saying, you're used to that working, you communicated that you see through the surface behavior to the strategy beneath it. You're not reacting to her words, you're observing her pattern. This is incredibly powerful because most men she encounters are completely blind to it. They react to what she says at face value. You didn't. You saw the game. And that immediately separates you from every other man she's interacted with. Second, you reframed the dynamic. Before you spoke, she was the one evaluating you. She asked the question. She set the frame. You were the one on trial. But with one sentence, you flipped it. Now suddenly, she's the one being observed. She's the one being read. The evaluator has become the evaluated. And that shift, that reversal of who is qualifying to whom, is the fundamental shift in power dynamics that creates attraction. Third, you showed emotional non-reactivity. You didn't get upset. You didn't get defensive. You didn't try to prove anything. You remained completely calm. And in that calmness, you communicated the most attractive thing a man can communicate. I am grounded in who I am. Your tests don't threaten me. I don't need your approval to feel good about myself. This is what women describe when they say they want a man who is confident. They don't mean a man who talks loudly or brags about his accomplishments. They mean a man who cannot be emotionally destabilized by her. A man who is so rooted in his own identity that her chaos bounces off him like rain off stone. Fourth, and this is subtle but critical, you created curiosity. The moment you said that phrase, her brain lit up. Because now she's thinking, wait, who is this guy? He's different. He sees me. He's not intimidated. He's not trying to impress me. What else does he know? What else can he see? You became unpredictable. And unpredictability, in the context of emotional safety and confidence, is one of the most potent drivers of female attraction. Now let me give you a few more examples of how this works in different contexts, because the killer phrase isn't just one sentence. It's a principle. It's a framework. She says, "I have a boyfriend." You say, "I didn't ask for your resume. I said hello." She says, "You're too short for me." You say, "And yet here you are, still talking to me." She says, "I bet you say that to all the girls." You say, "Only the ones who need to hear it." She goes cold and distant to test your reaction. You say nothing. You match her energy. You pull back. And when she comes back around, because she will, you don't acknowledge the absence. You simply continue as if your world kept spinning without her. Each of these responses follows the same principle. You do not accept the frame she's offering. You do not defend. You do not chase. You remain in your own reality, and you invite her into it rather than stepping into hers. Now, I want to go one level deeper, because this isn't just about clever lines. This is about something much more fundamental. The reason the killer phrase works is not because of the words themselves. You could memorize 100 phrases and still fail if you deliver them from a place of insecurity. The words are just the vehicle, the engine. The thing that actually creates the shift is your internal state. When you say, "You're used to that working, aren't you?" and it lands, it's because in that moment, you genuinely believe it. You're not performing confidence. You're not faking amusement. You actually see the test for what it is, and you're actually unaffected by it. And this brings us to the deeper truth that I really want you to understand. The killer phrase doesn't work because it's a tactic. It works because it's an expression of a mindset. The mindset that says, "I am the prize. I am the one evaluating. I am the one choosing. And if someone tests me, that tells me more about them than it does about me." This is the mindset that women are fundamentally screening for. This is what all the testing is about. She wants to find a man who actually has this inner reality. Not one who's performing it, not one who read about it online, but one who lives it. And the beautiful paradox is this: when you truly adopt this mindset, when you genuinely stop needing external validation to feel confident, you don't even need the killer phrase anymore. Your entire presence communicates it. The way you stand, the way you speak, the way you hold eye contact, the way you let silence exist without rushing to fill it. The phrase is the training wheels. The mindset is the bicycle. Now, I have to give you a warning, because I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't. This knowledge is powerful, and like anything powerful, it can be misused. There's a difference between using this to establish healthy boundaries and mutual respect, and using it to manipulate, control, or emotionally dominate someone. If you're using the killer phrase to hurt women, to make them feel small, to feed your own ego, you've missed the point entirely. You're not strong, you're just wounded, and you're using strategy to mask it. The goal here is not to defeat women. The goal is to show up as a man who is so grounded, so self-aware, and so emotionally mature that you can navigate these dynamics with grace. A man who can see the test, pass it with ease, and then, here's the important part, still treat her with warmth, respect, and genuine interest. Because the most attractive thing in the world is not a man who is cold and untouchable. It's a man who is strong and warm at the same time. A man who can hold his ground without losing his heart. A man who can say, "You're used to that working," with a smile, not with contempt. That's the balance. That's the goal. Strength without cruelty. Confidence without arrogance. Awareness without manipulation. So here's what I want you to take away from this. Every interaction you have with a woman you're attracted to, every single one, contains moments where she's watching to see who you really are. Not who you say you are, not what your Instagram looks like, not what car you drive. She's watching how you respond when she pushes, how you carry yourself when things get uncomfortable, whether you hold your ground or whether you fold. And in those moments, you have a choice. You can do what most men do: react, defend, chase, crumble. Or you can do something different. You can pause. You can breathe. You can look at her with clarity and calm. And you can let her know, without arrogance and without aggression, that you see the game and you're not playing it. Not because you don't care about her, but because you care about yourself enough to not be shaken. That's the killer phrase. That's the shift. That's the difference between the man she forgets by morning and the man she thinks about for years. Become that man. If this hit different, if something in this video made you stop and think, then do me a favor. Subscribe. Drop a comment below telling me about a time you experienced one of these tests and how you handled it. I read every single one. And share this with a friend who needs to hear it, because we're building something here. Not just a channel, a way of thinking. I'll see you in the next one.